Welcome. I am the Body Whisperer, and I am glad you are here. Let us go quietly inside you to meet Adenosine Andy, one small part of you that keeps working through the night while you sleep. Every waking hour, Adenosine Andy builds his case for sleep, one quiet molecule at a time, until the brain has no choice but to rest. But first, let us settle in together. Find a comfortable position. Let your arms grow heavy, your legs, your shoulders. Take a slow breath in and let it go. One more. In and release. Good. Now, while you rest here doing nothing at all, something quiet is happening inside you. Your body is working. It always is, every hour of every day, without ever asking for thanks. I want you to get to know it a little better, to listen to it, to feel it, to appreciate it. Because the more you understand the quiet world beneath your skin, the more at home you feel inside your own body. There is nothing you need to do now. Nowhere to be, nothing to figure out. Just breathe. Close your eyes if you have not already, and let us begin. There is a quiet piece of work going on inside you right now, and it has been going on every night of your life. It begins long before you close your eyes. It begins the moment you open them. Somewhere inside the soft grey matter of the brain, that roughly 3-pound organ sitting at the center of everything you have ever done or thought or felt, a molecule begins to appear. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way dust gathers on a shelf. One molecule, then another, then a slow and steady accumulation that builds across every waking hour. By the time you find yourself here in the dark, with the pillow cool against your face and the weight of the day beginning to let go, that molecule has been at work for a long time. His name in this story is Adenosine Andy. Andy is not a character who rushes. He has never rushed. He is the patient, methodical byproduct of the brain doing its job, and the brain does an enormous job. Every thought you had today, every word you read, every decision, large or small, required energy. The brain burned through that energy the way a lamp burns through fuel, and adenosine is what was left behind. Not waste exactly, something more like a receipt. An honest record of the hours spent awake and the work done inside them. Here is the thing about adenosine. It does not simply float free and harmless through the brain. It lands. It settles onto the surfaces of neurons, the brain's nerve cells, the ones that carry every signal from thought to movement to sensation. And when it settles there, it turns their activity down. Not off, just down, one quiet notch at a time. The turning down is something you have felt your whole life without ever having a name for it. It is the soft heaviness that arrives in the afternoon when you have been concentrating too long. It is the way your eyes lose their grip on the page. It is the particular quality of stillness that comes over you in a warm room after a long day, when even the things you care about seem to require just a little more effort than they did this morning. That is adenosine. That is Andy doing exactly what he is supposed to do. And what he is supposed to do is keep the tally. Every brain needs to know how long it has been awake, not as a matter of courtesy, as a matter of survival. The brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in the body. It consumes energy at a remarkable rate relative to its size, and that consumption demands regular maintenance. The kind of maintenance that can only happen in one particular state, sleep. So the brain keeps a running count. It uses adenosine as the counter. The longer you stay awake, the more adenosine accumulates, the stronger the signal becomes, a signal that says, plainly and without drama, rest is owed. Scientists have a formal name for this. They call it sleep pressure, or sometimes sleep drive, meaning the accumulated biological need for sleep that grows across the waking day. Andy is that pressure made visible. He builds his case one molecule at a time, across every waking hour, in the quiet interior of the brain. Now, there is a force that files objections. Caffeine, the molecule found in coffee and tea, and a long list of other things humans have discovered and enjoyed, has exactly one trick. It fits the docking spots on the brain's neurons, where adenosine is meant to land. Caffeine has no message of its own. It simply parks in the space and blocks. When those spots are filled with caffeine, Andy's signals cannot get through. Not because Andy stopped working, not because the tally paused. The adenosine kept accumulating, the count kept climbing, but the brain stopped hearing it. For a few hours, that feels like alertness, and in a narrow sense, it is. But the bill is not forgiven. It is only deferred. When the caffeine finally clears, and it always clears, every backed-up message from Andy arrives at once. The sleep pressure that had been quietly building all along lands in full. That particular heaviness, the one that arrives mid-afternoon with a kind of inevitability, is not a flaw in the system. It is the system delivering an honest report that was delayed. Andy knows this. He has always known this. He is not bothered by the delay. He is patient in a way that only a molecule can be, which is to say, completely. He will wait. He has the whole day and the whole brain and all the time that wakefulness requires. He will build his case in the dark spaces between the neurons, along the quiet corridors of the brain's interior, until the evidence is simply too heavy to ignore. And then, and only then, the brain will do what it has been promising to do since early afternoon. It will sleep. Let your shoulders drop now. Let the weight of the arms settle into wherever they are resting. The breath is easy. The brain has been at this work all day, and it is almost done making its case. You do not need to do anything to help. The tally is kept without any effort on your part. The molecules are already in place. The quiet evidence is already substantial. All that remains is the rest that the brain has been earning, hour by careful hour, since the morning began. Your body has done this every single night of your life. It knows the way without being told. Let it lead. Every brain cell, every neuron is a small engine. It fires, it receives, it processes. It does this thousands of times a minute all day without being asked and without stopping. And like any engine, it leaves something behind. The thing it leaves behind is adenosine, not as a mistake, not as waste exactly, more like a receipt. Each time a neuron does its work, burns its fuel, fires its signal, passes the message along, a little adenosine is released into the fluid surrounding it. One molecule here, one there. Unhurried, unremarkable, steady. By mid-morning, the fluid holds more adenosine than it did at sunrise. By afternoon, more still. The count climbs the whole time you are awake, because the neurons are working the whole time you are awake. They do not take breaks. They do not run quiet. They are the busiest organ in the building, and adenosine is their running tab. Andy knows this. He is not in a hurry because he does not need to be. Time is entirely on his side. Here is the thing that most people never quite learn about adenosine. It does not shout. It does not send a signal that crashes through the brain the way a loud sound does. What it does is quieter and stranger. It drifts, it settles. It finds the docking spots on the surface of neurons, small receiving pockets built exactly to its shape, and it fits itself in. And when enough of those pockets are occupied, the neurons slow down. Not stopped, just turned very gently one notch toward quiet. Their thresholds for firing rise. They become slightly harder to excite. The whole system begins to lose its crispness, its edge, its eagerness to fire at anything. That feeling has a name. You know it well. It is called sleepiness. Not tiredness, exactly. Not the ache in the legs or the strain behind the eyes. Those are different things, made by different mechanisms. This is something cooler and more central. A drift, a softening. The sense that the room has gone slightly less urgent than it was. That the thoughts are losing their sharp corners. That the pillow has begun to make a reasonable argument. That is adenosine, settling into its docking spots. That is Andy, filling the inbox. The docking spots themselves, the receiving pockets built into the neuron surface, are called adenosine receptors. Think of them as small keyholes, shaped over millions of years to fit one key. Adenosine, when the key is in the lock, the door swings a certain way. In this case, that means the neuron quiets. The door it opens leads toward rest. The brain has these keyholes in large numbers, scattered through many regions, but concentrated most heavily in the areas that regulate wakefulness and attention. That is not an accident. The brain has built its own shutdown mechanism right into the places that keep it running. It is almost elegant. The same tissue that sustains waking is also counting the cost of it and holding the means of payment. Now, caffeine. Not a villain, not a character with a plan, just a molecule with a very convenient shape. The shape happens to match those keyholes almost exactly. Not perfectly, adenosine still fits better, given the chance, but well enough to park in the space and block the real key from entering. When caffeine is sitting in the receptor, adenosine cannot dock there. The neuron does not receive the quiet-down signal. The sleepiness does not register. But here is the part that matters, and it is the part the morning cup never mentions. The adenosine is still being made. The neurons are still working. The tab is still running. Andy is still filing his documents, one molecule at a time. The only thing that has changed is that the inbox is blocked. The receipts are stacking up in the hallway, unseen, uncounted, waiting. When the caffeine eventually clears, as all molecules do, given time, the docking spots open up again. And every adenosine molecule that was waiting gets in at once. The whole accumulated weight of the blocked hours arrives in a single delivery. That is the crash, not a failure of the coffee, an honest accounting finally allowed to proceed. Andy knows this hour. He has seen it many times. He is patient about it, the way anyone is patient about something they know is inevitable. The detour is real. The delay is real. But the end point does not change. Sleep pressure accumulates. The brain keeps its tally. And at some point, whether gently, through the long, slow drift of an uninterrupted evening, or all at once, when the caffeine steps aside, the tally gets paid. The body you are resting in right now has been running that tab all day. Every neuron firing over your morning, your afternoon, your evening, every signal sent and received has added quietly to the count. The sleepiness you feel is not vague or mysterious. It is denominated. It is specific. It is the sum of the work your brain has done, expressed in a molecule, settling now into the docking spots that were built to receive it. That is the whole of the mechanism. Nothing hidden, nothing complicated. It did not develop to make the days feel heavy. It developed to make the night make sense. There is no next thing. Nothing waiting on the other side of this moment. Just the weight of the blanket and the slow, easy breath. The brain is not a solid thing. Most people picture it that way, dense and fixed, packed tight like clay. But the brain is riddled with tiny spaces between its cells, and those spaces are alive with fluid. That fluid moves, it carries things. And one of the things it carries, from the very first moment of the day, is adenosine. Adenosine Andy does not travel far. He does not need to. He is produced right there, in the brain, as a natural consequence of neurons doing their work. Every time a nerve cell fires, processing a thought, parsing a sound, pulling a word out of memory, it uses energy. and energy use leaves something behind. Not waste, exactly. More like a receipt. A record of effort. That receipt is adenosine. What nobody tells you is that the brain does not stash these receipts in a drawer. It lets them float. Andy drifts outward into the fluid between cells, a fluid called the extracellular space, meaning the space outside the cell walls. He does not rush. There is nowhere he needs to be except here, in the slow, patient accumulation that has been going on since the alarm went off this morning. And as he drifts, he finds what he is looking for. Small receiving points on the surface of the neurons themselves. These are the adenosine receptors, the docking spots, the quiet inboxes that neurons keep just for him. When Andy settles into one of those spots, something changes in the neuron. It becomes a little less likely to fire, a little less excitable. The technical word is inhibition, meaning a gentle turning down of the signal. Not off, just lower. One neuron quieting down would mean nothing. The brain has roughly as many neurons as there are stars in a small galaxy. But the thing about adenosine is that it accumulates everywhere at once. Every active cell is producing it. The fluid fills slowly, the way a room fills with warmth from a fire, not all at once, not in a rush, but steadily and eventually in every corner. By mid-morning, there is enough that a quiet tiredness begins to collect at the edges of attention. By mid-afternoon, it is harder to ignore. Here is the thing about that mid-afternoon feeling. Most people assume it is caused by lunch, or a dip in blood sugar, or simply the particular misery of a long Tuesday. Those things play their own parts, smaller than they seem. But underneath all of it, the adenosine has been building since dawn. The afternoon lull is partly Andy, doing exactly what he was always going to do, on the schedule he has always kept. Patient as the day is long. And then there is caffeine. Its role in this story is not complicated, but it is worth holding steady for a moment because it is so often misunderstood. Caffeine does not destroy adenosine. It does not speed up the brain to counteract it. What it does is simpler and more specific. It fits inside those same docking spots on the neurons, the very receptors Andy is trying to reach. And it sits there, quietly blocking. The neuron cannot tell Andy has arrived because the door is already occupied. The brain keeps producing adenosine. Andy keeps accumulating in the fluid. The receipts keep piling up. But the neuron's inbox is full of something that is not actually a message, just a placeholder that looks like one. The sleepiness cannot land. The pressure cannot register. For a few hours, the tally is still being kept, but nobody is reading it. Turn now to Receptor Rita. Her job, if you could stand beside a neuron and watch, is to stay open to the signals she is meant to receive. She is a small, attentive shape on the outer surface of the cell, a little funnel of protein with a binding pocket at the top, shaped precisely to receive adenosine and pass its meaning inward. When Andy docks with her, she changes shape just slightly, and that small change sends a signal into the neuron. Slow down. Rest is being earned. The case is building. When caffeine takes her spot instead, she cannot move. She cannot pass anything inward. She just sits there, occupied, waiting for the caffeine to leave. And she is professional about it. She does not protest. She does not force the signal through. She simply waits. The door is open, she would say, if she were the type to say such things, but the doorway is blocked. She waits. And when the caffeine finally does clear, which it will, as it always does, all of those backed-up messages arrive at once. Every receptor that was occupied is suddenly free. Andy's accumulated pressure, which has been quietly building in the fluid all the while, finds its way in at last. Not in a trickle, in a wave. That is the feeling sometimes called a crash, not a failure of the body, not a deficiency of will. Just the honest tally, presented in full after the delay. Andy knows this. He has waited out longer delays than most. He is not in a hurry. He knows the receptors will clear, the pressure will register, and the brain will eventually read exactly what he has been writing in the fluid all day. He is not trying to make anyone miserable. He is not making the body slow down as a punishment. The tally is not a burden. It is a record. It did not develop to count the hours against you. It developed to make sure they were never lost. Somewhere outside, the night is going about its business without you. It does not need watching. You can put that down too. There is a world between the brain cells that most people never think about. It is not empty space. It is a slow-moving bath of fluid, a kind of internal sea, and things drift through it the way leaves drift on still water. Adenosine is one of those things. Andy, patient as always, lets the current carry him. Here is something worth sitting with. The brain does not make adenosine on purpose. It does not decide to feel sleepy the way you decide to feel hungry. The sleepiness is just what happens when cells work hard. Every time a neuron fires, sending its tiny electrical signal down the line, it burns energy. That energy comes from a molecule called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. The name matters here, because when ATP is spent, when the last of its stored energy is used up, what remains is adenosine. Andy is not manufactured. Andy is left over. Think of it like burning wood. The wood is the fuel. The ash is what stays behind. Neurons burn their fuel all day, firing thousands of times across thousands of tasks. A thought here, a sensation there, a decision that felt small but wasn't. And the ash accumulates. Not in one place, everywhere at once, spreading slowly through that fluid world between the cells, rising like a tide that has no particular hurry about it. And then something remarkable happens. The adenosine finds a docking place, a small, specifically shaped opening on the surface of certain neurons, and it settles in. That opening is called an adenosine receptor. Receptor Rita, small and funnel-shaped and attentive, keeps the door open. She does not discriminate. She listens for every signal. When adenosine arrives and slips into her binding pocket, something changes on the other side of the door. The neuron becomes a little quieter, not silenced. Just turn down, the way you lower a volume knob one click at a time. That is the mechanism. One adenosine molecule docks, one neuron dips in activity. Then another and another across thousands of receptors across the whole brain. The effect is not sudden. It builds the way afternoon light changes. You do not notice the shift from bright to golden to dim, and then at some point you realize the room is darker than it was. What nobody tells you is that this is happening constantly. Every hour you are awake, more adenosine joins the fluid, more receptors are occupied, more neurons ease their pace. It is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the brain doing bookkeeping. The entries just keep coming in. Now there is one more detail that gives the whole picture a kind of quiet elegance. Not all parts of the brain are equally loud in this conversation. The areas that handle wakefulness, the regions that keep you alert, attentive, oriented in the day, are among the most sensitive to adenosine's signal. They have more receptors. They hear Andy more clearly. So as the day goes on, the very machinery that holds wakefulness together is gradually, gently, being asked to ease off. The brain is not just getting tired. The brain is getting a specific, targeted message. The work is nearly done. Receptor Rita, for her part, never tires of the work. She processes every arrival. She does not wave adenosine off or tell it to come back later. The door is open. That is simply how she operates, and she has been at this post since morning. This is where Caffeine's one trick becomes clearer. Caffeine fits Rita's binding pocket. It fits well enough to occupy the space before adenosine can reach it. But here is the distinction that changes everything. Caffeine does not cause the neuron to quiet down. It just parks in the spot and goes still. Rita's door is full, but nothing is being processed. The neuron keeps firing. The brain keeps moving, and Andy keeps producing ash. The tally grows in silence. That is the honest nature of the deferral. The adenosine is real. It is present. It is drifting through the fluid in concentrations that keep rising. It simply has nowhere to land for a while. So it waits, the way a delivery driver waits outside a building when every mailbox is full. The packages exist. They will be delivered. It is only a matter of time. And when the caffeine finally clears, when its molecules release their hold on the receptors and drift away, the mailboxes open all at once. Andy's accumulated messages arrive together. Rita processes them in order, without complaint. The neurons, which had kept their pace for hours, beyond what the underlying pressure warranted, receive the full signal simultaneously. The drop in alertness that follows is not a failure of the brain. It is the brain catching up with itself, the honest tally presented in full. There is something almost fair about it. The brain kept the account. It never lost an entry. It simply could not post them until the way was clear. Andy knows this. He has been doing the same work since long before caffeine was discovered, and he will be doing it long after. His patience is not stubbornness. It is just the nature of what he is. A byproduct is not in a hurry. It does not have a schedule. It has a destination. The fluid between the cells is quiet now. The tide has been rising all day. It does not announce its height. It simply reaches it. The day has loosened its grip. Whatever it was carrying, it can put down now. You are allowed to be finished with it. There is a place deep in the brain, not a room, not a landmark you could point to on a map, but a cluster of cells so small you could lose them in a thumbnail, where the argument between wakefulness and sleep is settled every single day. Not by force, not by decision, by weight. The brain keeps two competing signals running at the same time. One says, stay alert, keep moving, there is more to do. The other says, the work is done, the cost has been paid, rest is owed. For most of the day, the first signal wins easily, but only because the second one is still gathering strength. That gathering is Andy's work. He does not push, he does not insist. He simply accumulates, molecule by molecule, hour by hour, in the fluid that bathes the brain cells, the extracellular space between neurons. And as he collects there, he settles onto receptors, quieting one neuron, then another, then a dozen more. Not silencing them, just turning the volume down, the way a hand rests on a speaker to reduce the sound without stopping it entirely. Here is the thing most people do not consider. The brain has a set of structures whose whole purpose is to keep you awake. Clusters of cells that fire stimulating signals upward, into the cortex, into every region that needs to stay engaged. These cells do not rest. They are the morning shift that never quite punches out. They release their signals hour after hour, keeping the lights on across the brain the way a building's electrical system keeps every floor lit from a single source in the basement. And Andy has been docking onto those cells all day. Not all at once, gradually. The receptors those cells carry, the docking spots that Receptor tends so carefully, have been filling, one by one, as Andy's numbers have grown. And as they fill, the output from those wake-promoting clusters gets softer. Not gone, softer. The signals they send upward lose a little of their insistence. The cortex, receiving slightly quieter instructions, relaxes its own activity by the same small degree. And that relaxation is what you feel as the day's first hint of heaviness. Not tiredness exactly, more like a loosening. Receptor for her part, is doing exactly what she was built to do. She holds her binding pocket open. She listens for every arriving molecule. When Andy settles in, she changes shape, just slightly, just enough, and the neuron she sits on receives the message. Ease back. She does not choose to pass that message along. She simply does. It is the most automatic thing in the world. What nobody tells you is that this process is happening in parallel across the entire brain at once. Not one receptor, not one neuron, not one region. Every part of the brain that does work produces adenosine as a byproduct. Every part of the brain, therefore, is accumulating Andy's presence in its own local neighborhood. The visual cortex, busy all day processing light and color and shape. The prefrontal region, sorting decisions and managing attention. The motor regions, coordinating movement. Each one running its own quiet tally. Each one, by evening, carrying its own accumulated weight. This is why sleepiness is not a feeling that lives in one place. It is distributed. It settles into the whole brain the way a change in temperature settles into a room. Not at the window first, then the walls, but everywhere together, slowly and evenly, until the air in every corner has shifted. Caffeine, when it arrives, parks in those same docking spots across the whole distributed system. Rita finds her pocket occupied. She cannot change shape. She cannot pass Andy's message to the neuron behind her. And so the wake-promoting clusters keep firing at full strength. The cortex stays bright. The heaviness does not arrive. This is the objection Caffeine files, not by shouting, not by adding energy that was not there, but simply by sitting in the chair so Andy cannot. And Andy, patient as always, keeps accumulating while the chair is occupied. He has nowhere else to be. He is not frustrated by the weight. He simply adds one more molecule to the queue, and then another, and the tally climbs without a single receptor to register it. When the caffeine finally clears, and it always clears because the body has enzymes whose only job is to break it down, steady and unhurried, Rita's pockets open again. Every one of them, more or less at once, and Andy's full accumulated presence arrives at the door simultaneously. Not gradually, as it would have if the day had unfolded without the interruption, but all at once, the entire deferred stack presented in a single moment. That is the wave. The one that arrives in the afternoon and makes the eyes feel weighted, and the thoughts feel slow, and the chair feels suddenly very comfortable. It is not weakness, and it is not failure. It is the honest tally delivered late. The brain doing its accounting with perfect accuracy, only on a delayed schedule. Receptor Rita processes it all in order. She does not complain about the backlog. She simply opens the door and lets every message through. This is how the tipping point works, not a switch that flips, a balance that tilts. Andy's weight, accumulated across the whole brain, across the whole day, eventually outweighs the wake-promoting signal, not by overpowering it, but by quietly, patiently becoming more than it can answer. Andy knows this. It did not make the night inevitable. It made it earned. Everything in the room is exactly as it needs to be. The dark is doing what dark does best. You can let it. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The brain is not a solid thing, not really. Between every neuron, every wire, every firing cell, there is space. A very small space, almost nothing, measured in the width of a few molecules, but space all the same. Scientists call it the extracellular fluid, meaning simply the liquid that lives outside the cells. And that quiet sea, that thin film of liquid between everything the brain does, is exactly where Andy lives. He does not live inside the neurons. He is not stored anywhere, waiting to be released on a schedule. He is made continuously, out in the open, as the natural result of neurons doing their work. Every time a neuron fires, it burns a little fuel. That fuel is a molecule called ATP, the brain's main energy currency, built by the mitochondria inside each cell and spent in the tiny fractions of a second it takes to send a signal. When ATP is spent, when that last bit of chemical energy has been given away, what remains is a smaller molecule, a stripped-down version of the original. That remainder is Adenosine Andy. He drifts out through the cell wall and into the extracellular fluid. Not all at once, not in any dramatic quantity at any given moment, just steadily, quietly. One molecule at a time, per neuron, per firing, across the entire brain. The brain has roughly as many neurons as there are stars in a small galaxy, and all day, most of them are spending fuel making Andy and letting him drift. That is the accumulation. Not a tide rushing in, not a flood. A slow, steady thickening of the fluid between the cells, rising the way a summer afternoon rises, imperceptibly, then all at once. And then something remarkable happens. The fluid moves. The brain is bathed from the inside, from channels that run between and through its tissues, in a liquid called cerebrospinal fluid. A slow, continuous flow. It carries things in and carries things out, and Andy, floating in the extracellular space, is carried along with it. He moves through the brain the way a rumor moves through a small town. Not fast, not all at once, but he gets everywhere eventually. That distribution matters. Because Receptor Rita is not stationed in one place. She is not a single gatekeeper at a single door. She is everywhere the fluid reaches. On the surface of neurons across the cortex, the thinking, perceiving outer layer of the brain. On cells in the brainstem, where wakefulness signals originate. On neurons in the hypothalamus, the brain's internal timekeeper. Everywhere Andy drifts, a Rita is waiting. And when he docks, she does what she is built to do. She turns the signal down. Just slightly, just one quiet notch. Now here is where it gets interesting. Every neuron Rita quiets is a neuron that was, a moment before, pushing toward activity. The brain, awake and working, has a natural lean toward excitation. Neurons want to fire. Signals want to propagate. That is not a problem. It is function. It is cognition. It is you reading a text message and knowing who sent it before you have finished the first sentence. That lean toward activity is the whole point of a waking brain. But it has a cost. Every lean toward activity spends ATP. Every spent ATP makes Andy. And Andy, once he finds a Rita and docks, tilts the balance the other direction. Not against activity, against the excess of it. Against the kind of perpetual high idle firing that would eventually exhaust the whole system. This is the part that often gets missed. Andy is not the brain's enemy. He is its accountant. He keeps a running tally of how much work the neurons have done, and he adjusts their baseline accordingly. Too much work, too long, and the adjustment becomes significant. The neurons do not stop. The brain keeps running, keeps perceiving, keeps processing, but it does so with less enthusiasm. Less voltage in a sense. The signals are duller, the connections slower. The thoughts that used to arrive crisp now arrive slightly soft at the edges. That is fatigue, not weakness, not failure. Just the honest accounting of a brain that has been spending ATP since the moment you opened your eyes. Caffeine, when it arrives in the extracellular fluid, does something simple and entirely unhelpful to this process. It parks in Rita's docking spot, the same funnel-shaped pocket Andy uses, and it sits there. It fits. It does not trigger the quieting. It simply occupies the space. Rita cannot hear Andy, not because Andy stopped sending. He never stops sending, but because the door is full. Taken. Temporarily unavailable. And the accounting continues anyway. Andy keeps accumulating. The fluid keeps moving. The concentration of unheard molecules keeps rising. Rita waits, professional and patient. She has no opinion about caffeine. She simply notes that her pocket is occupied, and she waits for it to clear. When it does clear, and it always does, because caffeine is eventually broken down and removed, every backed-up message arrives. Not gradually, all at once. Rita opens her pocket, and Andy is there, plural, concentrated, insistent. The quieting that caffeine deferred does not come softly. It comes with everything it was owed. Andy knows this. He has never been in a hurry. He does not need to be. He simply accumulates and drifts and waits for the door to open. The accounting was never paused. It was only deferred. You are further from waking now than you were a few minutes ago. That is the whole direction of travel. Just down and quieter. The accounting was never paused. It was only deferred. Here is the thing about Andy's work that tends to get overlooked. It is not just that he accumulates. It is where he accumulates, and what that placement does to the brain's very sense of itself as awake. The brain has regions, and they are worth naming plainly, whose whole job is to keep the rest of the brain alert. These are clusters of cells, tucked into the deeper structures, that fire steadily through the day and send signals upward, like a lighthouse sending a continuous beam. That beam is what wakefulness feels like from the inside. Not a thought, not a mood, just the simple baseline hum of a brain that considers itself open for business. Andy finds those clusters early, because those cells are among the most active in the brain. They work hard. They burn through their fuel, the molecule called ATP, meaning adenosine triphosphate, the small packet of energy every cell spends when it does anything at all, and they spend it fast. That spending leaves adenosine behind. Andy is, in the most literal sense, the ash of their effort. And he settles right there, among the very cells that are doing the most to keep things awake. Receptor Rita is there, of course. She is always where the signals need to be caught. Her binding pocket, the small open cup at her top that Andy fits into so precisely, is ready and waiting. When Andy docks, she does her work. She quiets the cell she sits on. Just a little at first, one notch down, then another when the next Andy arrives. And here is where the picture becomes remarkable. As those wake-promoting clusters quiet, the beam they send upward weakens. Not dramatically, not all at once. Think of it less like a light switching off and more like a dimmer being turned, very slowly, by someone who is in absolutely no hurry. The brain does not suddenly stop feeling awake. It begins to feel awake with slightly less conviction. The edges of alertness soften. Things that required effort begin to require a little more of it. Thoughts that were crisp begin to take a breath before they arrive. That is sleep pressure doing its honest work, not a failure, not a signal that something has gone wrong. Just Andy, methodical as ever, doing what he has been doing since the first neuron fired that morning. Now, caffeine does something specific here that is worth understanding clearly. When it settles into Rita's binding pocket, it does not make those wake-promoting clusters fire harder. It simply prevents Andy from quieting them further. The beam stays at its current brightness. The dimmer stops moving. From the inside, this feels like alertness returning, like a second wind arriving from nowhere. But the dimmer did not move back up. It only stopped moving down. This is a distinction. The brain does not always communicate well. The feeling of alertness after caffeine arrives is real. The return of full, fresh wakefulness is not. The clusters are still carrying whatever adenosine had already accumulated before the caffeine arrived. Rita has Andy from the morning already docked and seated. The newcomers are simply queued outside, unable to get in while caffeine holds the pocket. Andy knows this. He does not file a protest. He does not look for another door. He waits in the extracellular fluid, that thin, clear space between neurons where he moves and rests, with the patience of something that understands how this ends. And while he waits, more Andy is being made. Every thought, every small decision, every glance at a screen or reach for a glass, every word spoken and processed and replied to, all of it burns ATP, and all of it leaves adenosine behind. The queue grows longer. When the caffeine eventually clears, it does not announce its departure. There is no signal, no warning. Rita's pockets simply become available again, one by one, and Andy, who has been waiting in good order, fills them. All of them, quickly as these things go. The wake-promoting clusters feel the full weight of the accumulated morning and afternoon and early evening at once. The dimmer, which had been held still for hours, drops several notches in what feels like a single breath. That is what people call the crash. It is not tiredness arriving. It is tiredness being received after a long delay in a single delivery. The brain is not broken when this happens. It is just running the math it was always running, on a schedule that was deferred but never cancelled. The clusters quiet, The beam softens. Rita processes what Andy has been holding in trust. The whole brain balance that had been tipped toward wakefulness by caffeine's presence begins, at last, to tip the other way. Toward rest, slowly, the way everything honest moves. Nothing in this is cruel. Nothing is a punishment for an afternoon cup of something warm. It is simply the brain's accounting system doing what accounting systems do, recording every transaction, deferring nothing permanently, presenting the final tally when the time is right. It did not hold a grudge. It held a ledger. Let the thoughts go where they want to go. You do not have to follow them. One drifts past, and then another, and then nothing at all. The brain is a busy place. Even at rest, even in the quiet of a room like this one, its neurons are firing, its fluid is circulating, its small chemical conversations are never fully silent. Every one of those conversations costs something, and the cost paid out in adenosine does not stay where it was made. Here is the thing about adenosine. It does not pile up in one corner and wait. It spreads. The fluid between neurons, a thin, generous medium called extracellular fluid, meaning the liquid that lives outside the cells themselves, carries it broadly, letting it drift through the brain the way warmth drifts through a room. There is no pump, no directed delivery. It simply moves, as things in fluid do, from where there is more toward where there is less. So every region that has been working contributes. The part of the brain that handled your last conversation. The part that tracked the light changing outside. The part that kept your balance when you stood up too fast this afternoon. All of them burning fuel. All of them releasing adenosine as they do. And all of that adenosine pooling slowly, evenly, into the shared space the whole brain drinks from. Andy knows this. What builds through the hours is not a local complaint. It is a system-wide account. Neuroscientists call this process sleep homeostasis. Homeostasis meaning the body's tendency to keep itself in balance, to correct for what has drifted. Sleep homeostasis is simply the brain's version of that principle. The longer you have been awake, the stronger the pressure towards sleep grows. And the longer you sleep, the more completely that pressure is resolved. Balance sought, balance found, every time. There is something almost architectural about it. The brain does not decide to get tired the way you decide to sit down. It does not weigh options. The accumulation happens whether anyone is paying attention or not. The adenosine rises because the neurons fire, and the neurons fire because that is what neurons do. The tiredness that follows is not a choice and not a mood. It is arithmetic, honest, patient, and absolutely consistent. And the arithmetic is precise in a way that turns out to matter. What the brain is tracking at its most basic is not just how long you have been awake. It is how much metabolic work the brain has actually done. A long, demanding day of focused thinking produces more adenosine than a long, easy one. The brain is not simply counting hours, it is weighing effort. The ledger knows the difference. Receptor Rita, small and patient at her post on the surface of each neuron, is the one who actually reads the entries. She sits in her usual place, a small binding pocket open at the top, waiting for the signal she is designed to receive. When adenosine arrives and settles into that pocket, the neuron beneath her quiets. Not switched off, dimmed, a little less likely to fire, a little less responsive to whatever signal is asking it to go. Multiply that dimming across every receptor Rita in every region of the brain, and the whole instrument slowly lowers its hum. Caffeine does not change the entries in the ledger. That is the detail worth sitting with. When caffeine arrives and parks in receptor Rita's pocket, it does not consume the adenosine waiting to dock. It does not dissolve the molecules or send them somewhere else. It simply sits in the pocket that adenosine would have filled, and so the message goes unread. The entries queue. Receptor Rita, blocked and professional, waits without complaint. The hum in the brain does not lower as it should, and the ledger, indifferent to all of this, keeps writing. That is why the window after caffeine clears can feel so abrupt. It is not a new tiredness arriving. It is an old tiredness, deferred and now delivered in full. All the entries that queued while the pocket was occupied arrive together. Receptor Rita processes them in order, calmly and without ceremony. And the brain finally feels what the brain had been accumulating for hours. What nobody tells you is that this system is, in a quiet way, calibrated. The brain does not simply keep piling on pressure without end. As sleep approaches and adenosine levels rise high enough, something shifts. Not a collapse, but a handoff, slow and well prepared, like a long relay runner who has been doing their portion of the work and now approaches the next runner with a steady, unhurried stride. The pressure built by adenosine is not the end of the story. It is the setup for everything that follows. The chemistry of sleep onset is waiting just behind it. But that is a story for a little later in the night. Right now, in this moment, the thing worth understanding is the scale of what Andy has been doing all day. Not building pressure in one place, building it everywhere. Slowly, evenly, spread through the whole brain's fluid, read by every receptor Rita in every region, written into a ledger the brain has kept since the first moment of waking. Andy knows this hour. And the ledger does not lie. It does not exaggerate, and it does not forgive a debt. It simply keeps the count steady, distributed, patient as fluid itself, until the brain and the body finally agree it is time to settle the account. It did not make the weariness dramatic. It made it true. Let the back settle into the mattress. Let it take your weight completely. It has been waiting all day to do that. There is a moment in the brain, somewhere in the long middle arc of the day, when the balance begins to shift. Not dramatically, not with any announcement. Just a quiet tipping, the way a room fills with evening light so gradually that you cannot say exactly when afternoon became dusk. The neurons are still firing, the brain is still working. But something in the texture of all that work has changed. Here is the thing about adenosine. It does not simply pile up in one place and wait. It moves, it drifts. It finds its way into every corner of the brain's extracellular fluid, the thin, continuous river of liquid that flows between every neuron, around every synapse, through every corridor of the brain's architecture. Andy moves with it, patient as always, in no particular hurry, and as he drifts, he docks. One receptor, then another. Receptor Rita sits at the entrance of neuron after neuron, her binding pocket open, doing what she has always done. Listening, when Andy settles into her pocket, something changes in the neuron behind her. Not a shutdown, not a silence, a lowering of readiness, the way a singer might ease back from full voice to something softer. The neuron is still there, it still works. But its threshold, the point at which it will fire, the point at which it will leap into activity, has quietly risen. That word, threshold, is worth sitting with for a moment. Every neuron has one. A threshold, meaning the minimum signal the cell needs to receive before it sends a signal of its own. Low threshold means responsive, quick to fire, easy to excite. High threshold means the opposite. The neuron waits for a stronger nudge before it answers. When adenosine fills Rita's pocket, it raises that threshold. It does not switch the neuron off. It asks for more evidence before the neuron acts. And here is the part that nobody really tells you. This threshold change is not the same for every neuron. The brain is not a single instrument playing one note. It is an entire orchestra, and the musicians are tuned differently. Some neurons are deeply embedded in the circuits that maintain wakefulness, the constant background hum that holds you upright and aware and attending to the world. Others handle the quieter work of background processing, memory sorting, the slow integration of experience. And as adenosine gathers, it raises thresholds across all of them, but the wakefulness circuits feel it first. They are the most active, the most costly to run, the greatest producers of the metabolic work that makes adenosine in the first place. So they accumulate the most, and they quiet the most. Andy knows this. That is the real reason deep tiredness feels the way it does, heavy in a specific way. As though the parts of you responsible for pushing forward have simply stepped back. Because they have. Not because they gave up. Because the tally they had been building all day finally outweighed the signal needed to keep them loud. The quiet comes from the work. It was always going to come from the work. Caffeine, when it is present, slips into Rita's pocket before Andy can reach her. It sits there. It does not raise the threshold. It does not lower it either. It simply blocks Andy from completing his delivery, and so the tally goes unread. The wakefulness circuits keep their excitability. The brain keeps its urgency. Meanwhile, Andy keeps filing. The queue grows longer. The entries stack. Every neuron that should have received a quieting signal is still waiting for it, patient as its messenger. Then the caffeine clears. Rita's pocket opens. Andy walks in. All at once, every queued document lands. The thresholds rise across the brain simultaneously, not gradually, the way they would have had the deliveries been spread across hours. All together, in the space of a short stretch of time, the balance tips. The wakefulness circuits soften. The background hum that kept the day going drops toward a murmur. And what feels like a sudden heaviness, a wall of fatigue arriving without warning, is simply the accumulated drift of an honest accounting delivered late. Turns out the afternoon crash is not a failure of the brain. It is the brain doing exactly what it was always going to do. It just did it all in one installment instead of 100 small ones. Receptor processes each entry the same way, whether it arrives on schedule or all at once. She does not hurry. She does not hold anything back. The door is open. She receives what was sent. She does not distinguish between an orderly delivery and a delayed one. She simply does her work. There is something quietly instructive in that. The brain does not punish the delay. It does not recalibrate and start over. It reads the tally as it arrives, exactly as it was tallied, and responds in full. The biology here is not moody. It is not theatrical. It is simply complete. And the neurons, those small, finely tuned instruments, they receive the raised threshold. They ease back from full voice to something softer. Not silence, not yet. But the distance between wakefulness and sleep has grown measurably smaller, and it has done so without effort, without intention, without anything being asked of you at all. It did not require drama to make its point. It only required time. The room is dark, and the dark is kind. Sleep is not something you reach for. It comes and finds you. Time moved the way it does, in a quiet room. Not in leaps, in small, even steps. All day the brain had been spending. Every thought, every glance, every decision, each one a small withdrawal from the same account. And adenosine was the receipt, not a complaint. Just the record, kept honestly, in the thin fluid between the neurons. Receptor had been receiving those receipts since morning. One at a time, then more at once, then steadily, then heavily. She did not sort them by importance. She did not prioritize the afternoon meeting over the morning coffee, or the long commute over the brief exchange in the hallway. Every receipt was the same to her. Every moment of work left the same kind of mark. Here is something most people never quite picture. The brain does not accumulate adenosine the way a glass fills with water, rising evenly from the bottom. It accumulates it the way a city accumulates traffic. More activity in a district means more adenosine in that district. The visual regions were busy processing all day, so they contributed. The prefrontal regions, the ones responsible for judgment and planning, ran warm all afternoon. The limbic structures, where emotion and memory intersect, added their share. By late evening, adenosine had gathered from every corner of the brain, not uniformly, but proportionally, wherever the work had been done. That is the part worth sitting with for a moment. The sleep pressure a person feels is not simply the pressure of hours. It is the pressure of labor. A day of deep concentration produces a different tally than a day of light routine, even if both take the same number of hours. The brain knows the difference. Adenosine does not count the clock. It counts the cost. Andy knows this. And what the brain had spent all day producing, that honest, distributed, proportional tally, could not be undone by anything other than sleep. Not rest. Not quiet. Not sitting still with your eyes closed in a chair. Those things slow the accumulation, which is no small thing. But they do not clear the ledger. The clearing happens in sleep, and only in sleep, because the clearance mechanism, the process that actually removes adenosine from the extracellular fluid, runs most efficiently when the brain has shifted into its sleeping state. This matters in a plain, practical way. A short rest in the afternoon can take the edge off the feeling of heaviness. It returns some alertness for a few hours. But if that rest is brief, the tally is only slightly reduced. The full debt has not been paid. Andy is still there, patient as ever, with most of his documents intact. Caffeine, as always, had nothing to say about the debt itself. It never did. It could occupy Rita's docking pockets and hold them closed, and for a few hours the messages stopped being received. But the messages kept arriving. Andy did not slow down simply because the door was blocked. He kept filing. The queue kept growing. And then something remarkable happens, not all at once, but in the quiet way that remarkable things actually happen in biology. The caffeine, which had been sitting in Rita's pocket claiming to be adenosine, does not stay there. It gradually clears, its grip loosens. Rita's binding pocket, the small open space at the top of her structure, becomes available again. And the first thing that fills it is adenosine, then another molecule, then another. Not a flood. Just the queue moving forward. Rita processes each one in order. She does not rush. She does not express an opinion about the delay. The door is open and she does her work. Each adenosine that docks lowers the threshold of a nearby neuron, meaning the signal that neuron needs before it fires becomes slightly larger, slightly harder to meet. Across the brain's wakefulness circuits, which had been running at full brightness all day, that threshold keeps rising. Not dramatically, steadily. The neurons do not shut off, they become quieter. They require more to respond. The conversations between them become slower, simpler, less urgent. The brain does not go dark, it dims. That dimming is not weakness, it is accuracy. The brain is reporting exactly what it has done, exactly how much it has spent. The sleepiness that settles into the body, the weight behind the eyes, the soft heaviness in the arms, the way sounds seem to arrive from a little farther away, that is the tally, legible at last. All day it had been written in a language too small to read. Now, with the caffeine cleared and Rita's pockets full, and the queue finally delivered in full, the message is plain. Andy had made his case in increments small enough to go unnoticed. A single adenosine molecule docking onto a single receptor does nothing a person can feel. 10,000, do nothing a person can feel. But somewhere past the tipping point, past the moment when the accumulated pressure of the day's work finally outweighs the brain's drive to stay alert, the body simply knows. It does not announce the knowing. It simply lanes. The wait is not a warning, it is a record. Let the jaw unclench. Let the space between the eyebrows go smooth. Small places hold the day longest. The wait is not a warning. It is a record, and here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The record does not just describe how long you have been awake. It describes how hard the brain has been working the entire time. Think about what that means. Two people can spend the same number of hours awake and arrive at very different amounts of adenosine in the extracellular fluid, the thin, clear liquid that bathes the spaces between their neurons. One spent the day in quiet routine. The other spent it solving problems, managing something difficult, holding a lot in their mind at once. Their neurons fired more often. They burned more fuel. They produced more adenosine as a result. By the time evening comes, the second person is not simply tired because of the hour. They are tired because the cost was higher. Andy has been collecting honestly the whole time. And yet both people will feel something that seems the same on the surface. Heaviness, the slow, soft narrowing of attention. The moment when reading the same sentence twice starts to seem reasonable. That is the adenosine making itself known, not as an emotion, not as a mood, but as a simple physiological shift in the threshold that neurons require before they will fire. The threshold goes up. Signals that would normally pass through start arriving just short of what is needed. The brain gets quieter, not because it has decided to, but because the math has changed. Receptor Rita has been busy all day. She is a small, precise shape, a rounded binding pocket built into the surface of a neuron, waiting at all times for a signal. Her role is to receive what Andy delivers and pass that quieting instruction into the cell below. When adenosine fills her pocket, she changes her shape slightly, and that change travels inward. The neuron below adjusts. Its threshold rises. It becomes harder to excite. She does not force anything. She simply processes the message and lets the biology follow. Caffeine's one trick, fitting into Rita's binding pocket without delivering any message at all, is effective precisely because Rita cannot tell the difference until it is too late. The pocket is occupied. The adenosine is there, cued just outside. But no signal passes. Rita waits professionally for the occupant to leave, and the adenosine waits with equal patience in the fluid around her. It is not going anywhere. It is simply not yet heard. What this means in practical terms is something most people experience without ever quite naming. The moment caffeine clears from Rita's pocket is not the beginning of tiredness. It is the arrival of tiredness that was already fully formed and waiting. The adenosine does not need time to rebuild after the caffeine goes. It was always there. The queue was already long. What clears is only the blockade at the door. Everything behind it moves forward at once. Andy knows this hour. He has been making his case since the first neuron fired that morning. Every ATP molecule burned in every active circuit produced a small residue. That residue is him. He diffused slowly through the extracellular fluid, reaching Rita's pockets wherever he found them open. Where he found them blocked, he waited in the fluid with the patience of something that has nowhere else to be. He is not strategic. He does not adjust his pace based on the circumstances. He accumulates because the brain is alive and working, and that is all it takes. There is something almost restful in that simplicity. The brain does not need to decide to become sleepy. It does not consult a schedule or check the dark outside the window. It simply keeps burning fuel, and the ash of that burning collects, and the ash docks, and the thresholds rise, and the quiet deepens. Sleep pressure is not a command from above. It is a consequence from below, built out of nothing more complicated than the cost of being awake and doing the work of being a brain. The circuits that sustain wakefulness, the clusters deep inside the brain that broadcast their steady chemical signals across the whole structure, keeping every other region alert and ready, feel the accumulation most directly. They are the busiest. They produce the most metabolic work. They generate the most adenosine as a result. And so they are the first to feel the thresholds rise, the first to find their signals beginning to fade. When Andy quiets them, the rest of the brain receives less of their broadcast. The whole structure dims a little, proportionally. This is not a single event. It does not happen at a precise moment. It is a gradient, a slow, distributed dimming that moves across the brain the way a shadow moves across a room as the sun drops. Nothing switches off. Everything simply becomes a little harder to excite, a little more willing to be still. The word for this, when it is described carefully, is homeostatic sleep pressure. Homeostatic meaning the brain maintains a kind of internal account. Pressure meaning the account demands to be settled. Andy is both the accountant and the currency. He is the measure of what is owed, and the thing itself that collects the debt. The shadow continues to move. It does not make the brain dim early. It made the dimming earned. Nothing is required of you now. Not thinking, not planning, not remembering. All of it can wait until morning. And then something remarkable happens, not when sleep arrives, but just before it. Andy has been at work since morning. He has built the tally one quiet molecule at a time. Receptor Rita has been processing his entries for hours, lowering the brain's wakefulness circuits notch by careful notch. The neurons are ready. The whole brain has been leaning toward this moment, the way a heavy door leans into its frame. But there is one more piece to the story. Sleep is not just the absence of wakefulness. It is a specific kind of biological event. One the brain prepares for in ways that go well beyond simply going quiet. And the preparation is more intricate than it first appears. Here is the thing most people never think about. All day long, the brain has been spending energy, burning fuel, doing work. And burning fuel leaves residue. Not just adenosine, though adenosine is the most important part of that story, but other molecular byproducts as well, small proteins and metabolic debris that collect in the fluid spaces between neurons. The brain is tidy, but it cannot clean itself while it is busy. This is where a figure named Lars enters the picture, a little late, as he always does. Lars manages what researchers call the glymphatic system, the brain's own internal cleaning network, a quiet plumbing of cerebrospinal fluid that flows through narrow channels alongside the brain's blood vessels. Cerebrospinal fluid is the clear, slow-moving liquid that surrounds and fills the brain and spinal cord. Lars's system uses that fluid as a rinse, pushing it through the brain's tissue to flush out the accumulated proteins and metabolic leftovers that the day's neural work has produced. He cannot run this system while the brain is awake. That is not a limitation he apologizes for. It is simply how the system works. The channels his fluid travels through are narrower during wakefulness, and the brain's metabolic activity during the day produces more heat and more demand than his cleanup operation can manage. So he waits. He is very good at waiting. He keeps his equipment in order, and he has learned over time that the signal he is waiting for is not darkness exactly, and not the clock. It is Andy. Here is why that connection matters. As adenosine accumulates, as Andy's tally grows and receptor Rita processes more and more of his entries, the brain's arousal circuits begin to yield. The neurons that sustain wakefulness, the deep clusters whose steady firing has kept the whole system alert since morning, begin to fall below their usual threshold. Not all at once. The way a room does not go dark when you begin dimming the lights. It goes dim first, and then dimmer, and the edges of things soften before the middle does. And when those arousal circuits finally yield enough, a cascade begins. Sleep-promoting circuits, kept suppressed all day by the activity of the wakefulness circuits, are released from that suppression. They begin to fire. The brain does not just go quiet. It actively, purposefully shifts into a different operating mode. And that shift is Lars's cue. As sleep deepens, the channels through which his cerebrospinal fluid moves actually widen. Neurons, which maintain a small amount of water inside their bodies as part of their normal function, allow a subtle shift in that balance during deep sleep, and the spaces between them open just enough to let Lars's fluid flow more freely. More fluid moves. More debris is carried away. More of the accumulated proteins that have built up across the waking hours are cleared. This is not a slow trickle. It is closer to a tide. A careful, organized flushing of the brain's internal landscape, possible only because sleep arrived, and possible only to the depth it reaches because Andy did his work. Lars would describe the whole thing as professionally satisfying. He does not rush. He does not cut corners. He is thorough in a way that only someone with absolute confidence in his own schedule can be. He once noted with characteristic quietness that he only works in the dark, meaning not just that light disrupts his shift, but that everything about what he does depends on the brain having genuinely surrendered to sleep rather than merely stopped moving. Andy knows this. The connection between the two of them is not incidental. Adenosine's accumulation is part of what tips the brain toward the deep, slow-wave sleep stages, where Lars's system runs most efficiently. The tally Andy has been building all day is not only a record of work done. It is, in some sense, a standing appointment, a slow arrangement of conditions so that by the time sleep comes, the brain is ready not just to rest, but to be renewed. The cleanup does not happen because sleep happened. The cleanup happens because the sleep was deep enough, long enough, and earned enough by the pressure that preceded it. That is the part nobody quite explains. Sleep pressure is not just a ticket to unconsciousness. It is the guarantee of a certain quality of sleep, the kind deep enough to let the maintenance run, the kind that leaves the brain genuinely lighter by morning. A short sleep does not just cut the rest short. It shortens the depth, and a shallower night means Lars has less time, less flow, less reach. Andy's tally is not only what makes sleep happen. It is what makes sleep worth having. It did not just clear the brain. It prepared the brain to be cleared. Deeper now. Softer now. The breath keeps its own slow time, in and out, without any help from you. And so the brain rests. All of it. Every region, every small cluster that spent the day firing and asking and reaching. Andy knows this. He has been here before, many thousands of times, if you count back through all the nights a brain like this one has ever had. The pressure builds, the work is done. The brain lets go. It is not a complicated thing in the end. A molecule accumulates, it finds its place, the neurons grow quiet. And then, when the quiet is deep enough, the cleaning can begin. That is the whole of it, really. That is the whole story. Andy spent the day doing what he always does. One molecule at a time, no rush, no fanfare. Just the steady, patient accounting that the brain requires after any stretch of honest work. And Receptor Rita waited, the way she always waits. Her binding pocket open, her small arms still, ready to receive whatever arrived. Sometimes what arrived was Andy, and she let him in, and the neurons turned a little quieter, and the case moved a little further forward. Sometimes what arrived was caffeine, and she could do nothing about that. She simply waited for the blockade to clear. She is patient that way. She has learned to be. And when the caffeine finally moved on, Andy was still there. Every message he had been carrying, still in his hands. He filed them all in order, the way he always does. The tally came due. The brain felt the weight of it at last. That weight is not a burden. Not really. It is the proof of a day well used. The brain worked. The neurons fired. Thoughts were formed and carried and set down. And Adenosine Andy collected quietly behind all of it, keeping count the way only he can. No thought goes unrecorded. No effort goes untallied. And then the brain sleeps, and Lars begins his slow, thorough work in the dark, moving fluid through the spaces between the cells, carrying away what the day left behind. He does not rush. He never rushes. He has the whole long stretch of sleep to work in, and he uses all of it. The cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid that cradles the brain, moves through the narrow spaces between neurons while sleep is deep. It finds the small proteins that built up during the day. It carries them out, slowly, carefully. That is the trade the brain makes every night. It gives up wakefulness, and in return, it is cleaned. Andy made that possible. He always does. The depth of sleep that Lars needs, that particular quiet, that particular stillness, depends on how much pressure Andy built. A full day's worth of honest accumulation means a full night's worth of honest depth. The two of them have never needed to discuss it. They simply do their work in sequence, the way they always have. And Mila is here too, of course. She arrived when the darkness did. She always does. Her signal, that slow, sure rise of melatonin through the blood, told the brain that the world had gone dim and that sleep was the right answer now. Andy had been making that argument all day. Mila simply confirmed it. And Gabrielle held the door. She has been holding it since sleep began, turning away every excitatory signal that tried to slip through, keeping the neurons in the quiet that the night requires. She does not need to be thanked for this. She would find it unnecessary. All of it, Andy's long day of patient accumulation, Rita's careful waiting, Mila's arrival with the dark, Gabrielle's steady hand at the door, Lars moving through the spaces with his slow and thorough work. All of it belongs to a single, simple truth. The brain keeps an honest account. Sleep clears it. That is what the night is for. Not a mystery, not a lost stretch of time. A clearing, a reset. A tally brought back towards zero, so the morning can begin from a clean page. The body in the bed knows this, even now. The breath is easy. The limbs are heavy in a good way, a settled way. The weight of the pillow is the right kind of weight. Andy knows this hour. He knows what the deep dark feels like from the inside of a resting brain. He has been here before. He will be here again. For now, the work is nearly done. Not quite finished, but close. Very close. Notice how easy the breath has become. Coming and going. Coming and going. You are not managing it. It knows the way on its own. But close. Very close. And somewhere in the soft dark of the brain, Andy settles. Not done, just still. He has been at this since morning, since the very first neuron fired, and the very first molecule of adenosine drifted into the space between the cells. One quiet addition to a quiet tally. Then another. Then another. The brain did its work. Andy kept the count. That is all it ever was. Think of it this way. Every thought you had today cost something small. Every sound the brain processed, every word it sorted, every decision it turned over and set down, each one left a trace. Not a wound, not a debt that worried anyone, just a trace. A small, honest mark in the fluid between the cells where Andy lives. And the marks gathered the way they always do. Rita was there the whole time, her docking pocket open, patient in the way that only a receptor can be patient, which is to say, completely. She does not grow tired of waiting. She simply waits. And when Andy arrived at her door, she let him in. She always does. For a while, in the middle of the day, something else arrived at her door first. Caffeine, it did not knock. It simply settled into her pocket and stayed there, quiet and unhelpful. Not cruel. Just in the way. Andy kept accumulating. Rita kept waiting. The tally kept growing in silence, in the dark behind the blockade. And then the caffeine cleared, and everything that had been waiting arrived. All of it. In order, Rita processed each entry without complaint. She does not say anything about what took so long. She just opens the door. The door is open. And the neurons, one by one, raise their threshold. That is the word for how much signal a neuron needs before it will fire. The threshold went up. The firing went quiet. The brain began to soften at its edges, the way it always does when Andy's work is nearly done. The wake-promoting circuits, the deep clusters that had been holding the brain alert all day, felt it most. They work the hardest. They produce the most adenosine. They are the last to hold out, and the first to notice when the tally finally lands. They dimmed. slowly, without complaint. And Mila arrived, the way she always does, when the darkness finally settled in. She had been waiting outside, unhurried, carrying the signal that turns accumulated pressure into the actual beginning of sleep. She did not rush Andy. He did not rush her. They have a quiet understanding, those two. He builds the case all day. She files it. And Gabrielle held the door. She is not a complicated figure. She stands where the excitatory signals want to enter, and she turns them away, one by one, without drama. Not now, she says, in her way. The neurons that Andy had been gently quieting all day, she enforces the silence at their threshold. What he softened, she stills. And behind all of them, Lars waited. He is a patient one, Lars. He can only work when sleep has fully arrived, when the brain is horizontal and the cerebrospinal fluid, the slow, clear liquid that bathes the brain and flows through it, can move in the particular way it needs to move. He has learned not to take the waiting personally. But when the moment comes, he is thorough. He always is. Andy knows this. The whole long day was building to exactly this. Not to a dramatic conclusion, not to a moment anyone would notice from the outside. Just to a brain lying still in the dark, doing the quiet work of becoming ready again. The neurons have gone soft and slow. The thresholds are high. The fluid between the cells holds its last careful balance of adenosine, enough to keep the sleep deep, not so much that morning cannot come. This is the rhythm. This is what the whole long account was always for. And you are here at the center of it. The weight of the day settled, the breath easy and low. The thoughts, when they come at all, no longer sharp enough to hold their shape. Let them go. Andy is still. Rita is settled. The door is open, and everything that needed to come through it has come through. The brain is quiet. The night is deep. And somewhere in the soft space between the cells, the tally rests. Let your shoulders drop a little further. Let the back of your neck soften. The pillow is doing the work now, not you. The night is deep, and somewhere in the soft space between the cells, the tally rests. This is what the whole day was building toward, not a destination Andy rushed to reach. Just an arrival. Quiet, unhurried, as honest as the work that made it. Andy knows this. All day he moved through the brain's extracellular fluid, that thin, generous space between one neuron and the next. He collected himself from every fired signal every small act of attention, every moment of thought. He asked nothing dramatic of the brain. He only asked it to remember what it had spent. And the brain kept the record faithfully, the way it always does. Receptor Rita held her post through all of it. When Caffeine came and parked itself in her docking pocket, she waited. She processed nothing then. She simply held her shape and kept the door ready. When the caffeine finally cleared, she opened without ceremony and worked her way through everything Andy had left for her. Every queued entry, every deferred notch on the tally. She did not rush. She did not need to. Mila arrived when the darkness gave her the cue she had been waiting for. She brought the hormonal signal that turns accumulated pressure into actual onset, the shift from heavy to gone, from almost to finally. She and Andy share a quiet professional respect. He builds the case. She files it. The brain does the rest. Gabrielle held the door. That is what she does. The excitatory signals that kept the brain bright and busy through the day, she turned them away, one by one, without drama, without apology. The neurons that Andy had been gently dimming all day fell fully quiet under her watch. The silence she enforced was not emptiness. It was the necessary condition for everything that follows. And Lars is working now, in the deep, in the dark. The cerebrospinal fluid is moving through the sleeping brain the way it only can when the body is horizontal and the neurons have stood down. He is clearing what the day left behind. He finds it quietly satisfying. The very molecule Andy spent all day accumulating helped call his shift to begin. The tally becomes the signal. The signal opens the door. The brain cleans itself and nothing is wasted. Andy knows this dark. The brain is not waiting for morning. It is already preparing for it. Every cleared channel, every restored threshold, every molecule carried away and accounted for, all of it is the night doing its honest work, the same work it has always done, in the same careful order. The breath is easy now. The weight of the limbs is real and welcome. There is nothing to hold and nothing to solve. The tally has been handed over. The night has it now. While you sleep, Adenosine Andy is already at work. As the brain rests in its deep, slow waves, the adenosine that gathered all day is gradually being cleared from the extracellular fluid. The docking pockets releasing, the receptors resetting, the pressure lifting by degrees until morning finds the tally close to zero again. It is not a dramatic process. It is a careful one. Molecule by molecule, the brain returns to the beginning. You don't have to do anything. Your body knows exactly what to do. It's been doing this work for your entire life. Every single night. So let it, trust it, and as you drift deeper now, Adenosine Andy will be here when you wake up. Quieter, calmer, better. Sleep well.